Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. It's a somber mood today. It probably is for the rest of you as well, as we get that all too familiar feeling now of losing the Euros final and then having to talk about it as a podcasting team. It's absolutely gutting, isn't it, to say the least? And that feeling of losing to penalties on Italy was tough, but this feels almost as tough, I think, in some ways, because the hope kills you, doesn't it, as an England fan? And I'm going to try and sum up between me, Myles and Dave today to see how we're feeling after we've slept on the game and thinking about the emotion that goes along with it. But then also trying to rationalise how the game went, how England could have done better and, give Spain their credit as well as European champions. And we've got to talk about the future as well, really, haven't we? With Gareth Southgate's future still in the balance and whether he wants to stay on. And if he doesn't, who do we go for next? Yeah, a lot of questions, Myles, isn't it? And I think for me, it's just this feeling of overwhelming just disappointment because of the hope, isn't it? How about you?
Yeah, I think even though we were kind of disappointed with a lot of the performances through the tournament and maybe didn't have the same expectation of England going into this final, whenever you are there and you look at that squad on paper, there is part of you that thinks, yeah, we can do this. So to come away from it with the loss and a late on goal to kind of seal the game after that's kind of been the thing that England have done to get themselves over the line in the last few matches, it hurt. It felt like a real sucker punch. And yeah, even today, I know that we lost to the best team in the tournament, quite comfortably the best team in the tournament. Yeah. And even today, I still feel just gutted about it because it just feels like if it wasn't this time, then when will it be? 30. And I think my club side have won one trophy and I was 2 in my life. So it would have been nice to see that get done. And we missed out again, unfortunately.
I think that's one of the feelings that you envisage in your head when the final's building up, don't you? It's what would happen, how would it feel in England if we won? Like, it would be absolute euphoria because of how much pressure's built up on the team, and this release of having potentially won it would have been amazing. But that sinking feeling, Dave, the next morning, I mean, we talked, didn't we, in the group chat extensively after the game about what England could or couldn't have done. And we'll digest that later, Dave. Now you've slept on it. You were quite negative to begin with about Gareth Southgate, but are you feeling a little bit more philosophical and reflective now?
You just have to get it out of your system, don't you? I think, to begin with.
Me and Dave would have scrapped if we'd been in person yesterday, I reckon.
I did lie there, to be honest, last night, and it did take me a while to get to sleep just because you've just got everything going around in your mind, playing on your mind. And it was just a brutal sort of outcome, isn't it? I think it's getting so close to winning the thing. Again, we've been there. It's just, it does hurt. But I feel like this one probably isn't as painful as the Italy one, because I think we should have beat Italy in that final. But this Spanish team, I think particularly how we've been playing in this tournament, let's be honest, we've just got by in a couple of games. Probably had a little bit of fortune here and there as well. So, I mean, it's difficult to pick apart, isn't it, really? I mean, if we talk about the coach, the manager, this is now, his 4th tournament that he's had with England? I think the main question is really, will he feel like he's done all he can with this team?
Yeah, and I think when you look back at the tournament, though, you'll see that there's moments where we could have done more and could have, stepped on the gas a bit more. But I think Myles' point when we were talking after the game, and I agree with him to this extent, Dave, is that tactically, I don't know what more Gareth Southgate could have done for the game. I felt like he learned the lessons of the tournament so far. He put out the best team he had available. You could have maybe tweaked 1 or 2 players. But Myles, are you still thinking that way, that Southgate played the cards he was meant to play? It was just one of those performances, really, that didn't quite take off where we wanted it to. And Spain were just better.
Largely, yeah. I think tactically, particularly in the first half, I thought we got it absolutely spot on. I think the changes came at really good moments. There was a couple that maybe we could question a little bit. And I think actually the way that the players went about fulfilling their tactical role might have been where we got let down more than necessarily what the manager was asking of them. There's one thing that when I watched the highlights back, kind of trying to be objective and prepare for the podcast, that I really noticed, that I wonder if that maybe was a tactical oversight from Southgate. Generally speaking, yeah, I don't know what more he would have done in this game. We said in the group chat when the game was playing, 60 minutes you want to see Watkins for Kane.
Yeah.
55 minutes Watkins was ready. So he knew it. Then when we were struggling to create something, he brought Palmer in and it worked. It was perfect. So I think the only reason that you would question Southgate's tactical decisions is because you felt like that throughout the tournament. And the irony is, how many times have we said, I would have done that completely differently, but Southgate did it and it worked. And in this game, it just felt like we came up against better opposition. And that's been a bit of a running theme. Like when we faced France in the World Cup, they're a better team than us. We didn't do much wrong, really.
No.
But they were just a better team on the day. And that's what it felt like here. Like, I'm sure in a minute we'll get into the game and I'll go through a bit more of the tactics that I think England maybe got right and wrong throughout. But generally speaking, yeah, I don't put a lot of the blame at Southgate for this one. I think there are a few players that have got to take a long, hard look at themselves today and think, did I give everything to that final? And I think comfortably the answer is no for a lot of them.
Well, what are the shortcomings then, I wonder, for those players you're talking of? I mean, let's talk about the players you're mentioning as well and which players you've got in mind, because I thought there were a few exceptional performances from the team as well. Pickford had the game of the tournament by far for a goalkeeper. I think he was outstanding. I thought defensively as well, on the whole, we were generally quite good, although I've been very vocal about how poorly I think Kyle Walker played in this game and in the tournament generally. I thought he was caught short a couple of times, but who are you kind of thinking didn't show up there, Myles?
Okay, so Walker's a really interesting one. Walker had an outstanding first half. I thought he controlled that flank so well. And what was good was we knew what the problem was going to be going into the game. We knew that they were going to try and activate those two wide players. And I was nervous about that because the system England have been playing means you've got advanced fullbacks and a back three, which should leave loads of space behind for wingers to get into. And I was really worried about how Walker was going to deal with the threat of Cucurella and Williams. And actually, I think he did really, really well at it, to the point where Williams was having to go onto the other side because they knew that there wasn't going to be enough support for Luke Shaw on that left-hand side if Williams and Yamal doubled up. And in the first half, what you saw was Saka tracking back to cover Cucurella and Walker being able to deal with Williams on his own. The problem was that changed massively in the second half when Rodri went off, because all of a sudden it meant that Spain's entire midfield were willing to break forward. They didn't have someone sitting deep. So when they broke forward, particularly Dani Olmo came forward, Walker tracked him. And that left that space out wide because all of a sudden, Saka stopped defending and Rice and Mainu stopped tracking any of their players. And it kept dragging Walker out of position. You look at that first goal, watch what happens. Olmo breaks forward. Rice or Mainu don't pick him up. So Walker has to go with him. And that leaves a space for Williams. You look at the second goal. Cucurella starts running deep in his own half. He runs past Saka, goes all the way up the pitch, and then Walker gets to him late because he thinks that his winger is going to help him. So I don't think I actually do blame Walker. I think the system let him down there. And I do wonder if that's because we'd got used to this back three and advanced fullbacks. And actually in this game, we were playing more of a back four. So Walker didn't know whether he was a right-sided centre-back or a right-back for a lot of the game. That probably threw him. I think really the poor performances were particularly Declan Rice. Gutted by, because I think he's such an outstanding player. I've said all tournament, him and Saka would be the first two names on the team sheet for me, and they probably had their worst performance in the second half of the final. Yeah, I think that's really good. And John Stones as well. I thought Stones was really weak defensively, was getting dragged all over the place by first Morata and Oyarzabal in that second half. And that's where we lost the game, unfortunately.
Now, you mentioned that Dave disagreed with you slightly in the group chat and you might have come to blows if it was in person. I think I'm probably testing that theory with my friendship with you with this Lazio shirt on, aren't I, to be fair? So
I won't say what I called you before the podcast started.
No, that's not. But Dave, I'll move on to your thoughts as well, because you were quite critical of Gareth Southgate, really, weren't you, after this game had finished, like straight after in that raw, emotional moment. How are you feeling now? Is this a Southgate issue? Or as Myles was saying, is this just a few players that struggle to deal with that second half change of system a little bit?
I think there have been difficulties that have been evident from the very beginning of the tournament. I mean, you look at his lineup he started with in the Serbia game. I think he had Trent in that midfield and obviously wasn't playing with three centre-backs and wing-backs. So that clearly wasn't the idea that he wanted to go forward with. It was essentially forced into this system because we obviously played it for the first time and we looked more together as a unit, we looked more cohesive. So for me, I think there's all the ingredients there. He struggled to piece it together for this whole tournament, and you just have to wonder if there was an idea and a plan that was more functional than what we're seeing, because I think there's a lot of players in there that we're not getting the most out of them. There's all this talk about players not being fit as well. Obviously, the likes of Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham's been mentioned as well. The coach has to make these decisions for the good of the team. So if Harry Kane's not been fit for the whole tournament, why is he playing? And when he comes out after the game and mentions about Harry Kane, says we've not been able to get out to the level that we want him to be at, etc. I found that really shocking to say that, come out and say that after a final, straight away after a final as well.
Frustrating for Tony and Watkins as well.
Having some reflection period. So again, were the right decisions made there in fielding some of these players? Harry Kane was a passenger in this game, if we're honest.
Yeah,
and we really did struggle just to hold the ball up in those areas and keep hold of possession. And that's the thing for me. I just feel like we didn't perform as a team, nowhere near to what we're capable of. Even if that's to say, like, if you look at some of, for instance, the Netherlands game in the first half, that was streets ahead of anything we saw in this final.
Yeah, it was.
I know it's a completely different opposition, but the way we retained possession and kept the ball ticking over, keeping the ball at crucial times when we looked like we could potentially, come under threat from some of their attack. It's desperately what we needed at times in that second half, and we just couldn't do it.
Yeah, but like Myles said, the second half changed completely. I think Spain having to change Rodri really made them shuffle their pack, really, especially from the midfield going forward, and that was difficult to deal with, and that's clear. I still think Walker could have done more for the first goal, especially. Like the biggest threat was Williams, but regardless of that, I do think you're looking quite a lot at the games that have happened, Dave, and sort of criticising the fact that there wasn't a system ready for the start of the tournament. We kind of figured it out as we went along, and I kind of understand that to an extent, but we've got by on moments in this tournament, and every time we've found rhythm within a game, it's come good, whether that be super late or not, or whether it be in penalties. We found it eventually, and I feel like in this game we could have done that too. We equalised through Cole Palmer, didn't we? A substitution that actually worked again, which has been, to Southgate's credit, one of his better things later in the tournament is actually figured out a way and a timing of substitutions that works and suits the feel of the game. That happened this time. I seriously think after the Palmer goal, there was enough momentum there for us to step up and score another, because after that we just trailed off so much.
It was for about 2 minutes. The 2 minutes we got the ball back straight after kick-off. We had Saka on the right-hand side and we got into a couple of problem positions, but after that, Spain were on the front foot for the majority of the rest of the game. And I think the thing for me is you could see it coming. You could see them, they were creating chances. They started to get into those spaces. Myles mentions the space that Kyle Walker was leaving at the back post on numerous occasions. They're exploiting that space more and more as the game grew that second half grew on. And if you can see that happening in front of your own eyes, I think something has to change. And that third substitution just came too late. It was too reactionary for me.
Do you think that third substitution would have made any difference, Myles, if it was any sooner?
Maybe, depending on who it was. But I do. The only thing that I find funny about the last substitution, maybe, if we're going to look at it, is obviously he takes Mainu off for Palmer. It's a really attacking change. It has the intent that we wanted to see. But then what? Because Rice was already really struggling in the game. Spain's midfield was by far the best thing they had. And when Zubameni came on, he was willing to drive with the ball a lot more. They already have that in Fabian and Dani Olmo as well. So Rice was basically playing a midfield on his own and struggling. And Bellingham dropped a bit deeper and tried to kind of cover him there. But perhaps Gallagher or Wharton could have come in to try and solidify that base again and just get it to extra time at least, and not maybe risk it all in the 88th minute, which is, it's weird because that's why I feel like Southgate kind of can't win. Because we either moan at him for being conservative or moan at him for going for it and leaving gaps in behind. I think we have to attribute more of it to the players not taking accountability for what their role was. That's why I question whether it's Kyle Walker's fault that he's having to pick up 3 men. Because realistically, most of the time in that second half, Dani Olmo was unmarked. And when you've left a number 10, who's already one of the most creative players in the tournament, that free, someone's got to grab him. And then you've got Williams and you've got Cucurella, who both offer a threat down that same side. You're asking Walker to defend 3 players while your midfield is failing to pick up anyone, and you kind of leave them outnumbered. And Walker also picked a knock-up in the first half. That's the other change I would have considered. I think I would have brought Conter on. Because if you're going to play a back 3, if you are going to play a back 3 and you need another right-sided centre-back who can also cover the wing with a bit of pace, you've got him. You saw how well he did in the quarter-final. That might have been one change I looked at. But I think it's all much of a muchness. Do I think that we would have won the game if we'd done that? No, not really. Spain were excellent. And I know we'll come on to Spain in a bit. There are things that frustrate me about England's performance, but generally speaking, the better team won. That's what it comes down to.
I think the most disappointing thing is, and we earmarked it, didn't we, before the game? I said, I've seen Saka up against Cucurella on many occasions, and he's got the better of him more often than not. I think that was the one area.
This is a different Cucurella. We're
I think that
talking
was
about one of the players of the
we
tournament,
looked at,
though.
and there's numerous points in that first half. Okay, we started slow. We struggled to get a hold of the ball in that first 10 minutes, but there were quite a few occasions where he got him where he wanted to be. He wasn't doubled up on. He had that space. He didn't take him down the line once, and that's the annoying thing for me is there were too many players, like you mentioned, Miles, in there just didn't perform on the day. And we can moan about Southgate all we want, but I still think we could have done it. Even having the tournament that we've had, you could argue we've not deserved to be in the final, but I just think we could have done so much better.
I think I'll be honest, I think it's a bit naive, because I think if you look that Spain have managed to take out France, they've taken out Germany, they had Italy, Croatia in their group, but they've been an excellent side in this tournament. And Cucurella has dealt with countless wingers. He dealt with Dembele for France and kept him relatively quiet. He dealt with Sane when he came on for Germany. He's done it all tournament. And we're not talking about the Chelsea player right now. Like, this system suits him a lot better. And I think there's always that thing in Saka's mind in particular of, if I lose the ball here, they've got so much to go forward on that left-hand side that it's a lot higher risk than it would be necessarily if he was playing for Arsenal. And again, he didn't have a great game, Saka. Really, it's a shame, because I think he was one of the players that stood out for me in the tournament for England as a whole. And then this was the one where it let them down. And I do wonder if there's something to be said of what's the mentality of the England side. Like, we joke about Harry Kane not winning any trophies. We joke about Arsenal never managing to get things over the line. And now England have had 2 European finals that they've not won. They had a semi-final against Croatia that really they should have won and threw away. Yeah. And they had the quarter-final against France that they could have won, and it was in their own hands, and then they didn't. So are we starting to build a culture in this team that, yes, they're united, yes, they're together, but they are intimidated by the success? Because England have done that for generations, and the press don't help. The pressure of that environment is massive. The players, I think, you say, is Southgate getting the best out of these players? Well, no, but he couldn't possibly. We're talking about players who have just come off the back of an incredibly long club season. The year before, there was a Winter World Cup. We're extending the amount of games all of these players are playing every 5 seconds. Like, they all look shot to pieces. We didn't have a peak prime Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, or anyone. So, yeah, of course, Southgate's not getting the best out of them. The same can be said of the other teams, to be fair, but it did seem like we were carrying a lot of injuries that really just didn't favour us.
Can we just mention as well, we mentioned about the squad before, obviously, a few weeks ago. If he didn't have any intention of playing Anthony Gordon or...
Yeah, why has he gone?
Then why have they gone? Because you've dropped 2 probably arguably the most experienced tournament players in Jack Grealish and Marcus Rashford. That was one thing that was lying on Saka's shoulders, really, was the only wide player who featured prominently throughout the tournament that can actually run in behind. He's got the pace. And if he's not performing, then we're struggling. If you're not playing Gordon, we're not got that other option there.
It's good to Rashford of the season he did.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because Rashford of the previous season was a different player.
Perfect for this tournament.
It's gutting though, because we've got, I think a few people have said, the best squad, but not the best team. And that's the issue for me, is that if the criticism that I would level at Gareth Southgate is he hasn't figured out, first of all, what his best team is necessarily. Secondly, what the best formation for that team is and who fits where that's the most suited to their club positions. But thirdly, how to use the squad. Like, the squad is deep. Every position is really well stacked. And some of the players that didn't even make an appearance would be starters in so many of these European Championship teams. So why weren't they used more frequently? Why wasn't rotation happening like sooner in the group phase to at least give players a chance to recover from their long club seasons, We didn't even hit the ground running with the players that started.
Yeah, I think there's a few answers to that. I think it's different to club football. You don't necessarily need one formation. Like, we could say that for a lot of the tournament, Southgate approached the game depending on who the opponent was. And that's okay. That's how you progress in tournaments. You don't need a consistent style that you work on through a season. You need to quickly react to who your opponent is and get through the game. And he did that for every game but one. Like, I don't really want to criticise that. And you can say, I would have liked this player to get more time. I would have liked this player to get more time. But look at what happened when we didn't change some of those players. We could have all said, let's take Bellingham off sooner. And then the overhead kick doesn't happen. And you've got those players that, okay, they might not have been having the best 90 minutes, but they are still capable of that moment. And again, in a tournament, you need that. Harry Kane scores an extra time winner. You need that. You need someone who is willing to just get the ball in the back of the net and can produce that moment of quality. And building a system when really this is a very new England squad. It's the most different England squad we've seen. Think about the players they're missing. You mentioned it already. Rashford, Sterling, Calvin Phillips was talked about a lot as him missing. Henderson's not there. Maguire's not there. Shaw missed most of the tournament. This is a really different England side, and we're expecting them to play like a club side. That's where Spain had the advantage, I think, that their academy process is built up to suit this sort of style. And they know how to move with each other a lot more than England do from a very basic setup point of view. I don't know. I still think the long-term future looks good. We'll talk about Southgate in a minute and his future, I guess. But I'll start that conversation maybe by saying I'd stick with him for the World Cup, I'll be honest.
Well, we'll come back to that in a moment and put a pin in it. Let's analyse Spain first, because we've mentioned England and how they've kind of got through this tournament on moments, really, and, fantastic moments and moments of brilliance from players, some great goals along the way as well, some heart-stopping moments too, but it's meant that the momentum was with England because of that. So we were in the moment thinking more rose-tinted as the tournament went on, whereas on the other side of the draw, Spain were actually producing these performances from match day one. They were functional, they were cohesive. And as soon as those first couple of Greek games happened, Dave, we were sort of going, we've got to take notice of this Spain team, haven't we? And those wing marvels, Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal were just fantastic again, weren't they? They were a threat that we couldn't really deal with in the second half, especially, despite the efforts of the first half going so well.
Yeah, but particularly Nico Williams, I was really impressed by him. I'll be honest, I think Luke Shaw handled Lamine Yamal really, really comfortably, to be honest. I think particularly that first half, I don't think they looked very likely of creating much, Spain. I can't remember too many, chances in there. I think majority of them were a lot of crosses, a lot of overhit crosses. And I thought we can deal with that all day. But the second half, I thought Nico Williams in particular was out of this world. I think just how he managed that second half, some of his decision making as well. I think for such a young player, he looks so mature and makes the right decision, like 9 times out of 10 as well. But I've never seen Kyle Walker look so uncomfortable, to be honest. I just didn't know how to deal with him. And majority of the time, Kyle Walker's pace and his physicality will get him out of jail. But it didn't really do him many favours against him, to be honest, because he just pulled him out of position so many times. And that forward line were really clever in their movement and just how they linked up. It was a joy to watch, and it'll be interesting to see where Nico ends up at the end of this transfer window. I've seen he's been linked with Barcelona, so they'll be getting a hell of a player.
Well, it wasn't just the attacking players either. I thought in midfield they were great. Even after Rodri went on, they actually continued the same, which is testament to players fitting into a system. And obviously, Oyarzabal came on and scored that dramatic goal. His movement was great as well. Defensively, they looked good. Laporte had a great game. I've not been his biggest fan, but he played really well. And Lenormand as well. I thought he was pretty good and solid. And I don't see this team kind of anyone looking at them and going, they don't deserve this victory. They were by far the best team in the Euros. And I think they continue to prove that into this final as well, didn't they, Myles?
Yeah, they did. And I think they were just smart about how they approached the game and used the kind of youth as an engine, really. You talk about how the wingers got on against our fullbacks. Dave's right. Luke Shaw, that first 45 minutes, showed why, when he's fit, is probably the best left back in world football, I think. If not, he's in the top 3. I thought he was brilliant in that first half. But let's not forget, this was the first time he played 90 minutes in how long? And Kyle Walker, like we said, he picked up a knock in the first half. And then we're expecting him to continue against this young, pacey winger in the second half. And both of them were just flagging by the end. And that was a real thing that Spain exploited. They managed to keep hold of possession, get England chasing the ball for long enough, and just wore them down, basically. Dave's right, they didn't create a lot, but they didn't need to, really. No. They had a few moments where Pickford really got called into action in the second half, but go back and watch the highlights on YouTube, and you will see the first half highlights are when John Stones makes that sliding challenge on Williams and stops a cross coming in the box, and Phil Foden's kind of effort from that free kick that was quite lucky for England, and Harry Kane having that block shot that doesn't even reach the penalty area. Yeah. First half was quiet, but what Spain did do was dictate the play, keep possession, and wear England's press down to the point where in the second half they lost all discipline. And that's really impressive from Spain because they knew their way around this team. They've seen the lack of fitness in this squad that we've all been talking about, and utilise the fact that they've got some players with amazing talent and an engine. That's how, really.
Here's a question for you then. England tend to lose these big games. It feels like a pattern of Gareth Southgate's reign is when we face an elite team, especially in obviously finals and semi-finals, we tend to come unstuck. And it's usually when we have much less possession than the opposition. And we've never really been a possession team under Southgate, have we? Do you think that's something that needs to change for England as a culture, Myles, where we do keep the ball better and learn to not just get by on 35% of the ball?
I think both can be effective, particularly in tournament football. It doesn't really matter your route to goal always. And if you're a counter-attacking team, that's great. But we didn't really do that effectively either. I think we just need to make our mind at what we are. If we are going to let the other team have most of the ball and we're confident in our defensive ability, which we should be, I think our defenders, generally speaking, had a really good tournament, particularly our centre-backs, then we need to know how to hurt teams when we do eventually get the ball forward. And the lack of width and pace, obviously, that we saw in this tournament meant that we couldn't really do that to the best of our ability as well. When Watkins came on, it changed the game again. Not necessarily because he did much, but you saw that players were looking for movement in behind. That passage of play just completely changed, and you saw that everyone in that forward line was willing to move more, and the centre-backs were being pushed back. Now, I said it to you guys, didn't I, in the group, that if you've got 60 minutes of Harry Kane dropping into his own half and a centre-back following him out and trying to keep tight to him on the halfway line, and then all of a sudden they're used to going forward and you've got someone running in behind and they've got to go back towards their own goal, that's a massively different challenge to face in a game. And when you've got half an hour of that, it can cause you some problems. And when England do that, they do look more threatening. It's difficult, though, because Harry Kane's probably the best number 9 in world football still when he's fit.
Yeah, that's the gutting thing, isn't it? We've got players that on their day are fantastic, but fitness has played a big part in our best team not being at its best. But Dave, do you want to elaborate on what Myles was saying, or tactically where England's direction is going and where Spain's is going? And I think we've got 2 coaches with each team that have come through the youth systems for each of their respective countries too. So it's an interesting comparison to see where Spain are now and where England are.
We're definitely on a different path to what we have been in past. I mean, if you look at some of the players, how many we have got, a lot of technically gifted players. Yeah. I just feel like, particularly in this game, we didn't manage to utilise them properly. I think those 2 number 10s were almost irrelevant in the game. They were just anonymous. But I thought Foden was really quiet. I thought Bellingham at times, although he did make a couple, he got himself involved where he could.
I thought Bellingham was good.
I almost wonder whether we would have been better off with having 2 wide men alongside Harry Kane and just at least be able to try and push back their fullbacks, their wing backs, and just almost kind of cause them a different problem, because we really struggled in those areas. Let's not fool ourselves. This England team, the amount of talent that we've got in there now, going along with what Myles is saying, there are always going to be different problems that present themselves going through a tournament. You will have teams that will like to have more of the ball and keep hold of possession a lot more. But I don't think England will be that kind of team. I just think we've got the players to hurt teams in certain areas. I think we've got some really talented wide players, which I don't think we've seen enough of in this tournament, to be honest. I don't want us to see us playing this system, to be honest. I just think we've got potential to exert ourselves on the opposition rather than thinking about where can we get hurt. Because I feel like that's what this system is in a way. I just think it's too safety first. So I'd like to see us set up a little bit more adventurous than what we have been, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing, and the question mark over, I think, Gareth Southgate going forward is, what are we? What is our system? Does Southgate know? Has he got a vision with the players he has? I think the decision probably is in Southgate's hands in some ways, isn't it? I think he's earned the right to kind of decide whether he wants to continue or not, rather than be sacked, because he got to a final. And I think that was probably the goal for England, is to get to a final and see how it goes. And we've done that against all the odds. So it might be in Southgate's hands, and whether he's got the energy to keep going and whether he sees himself being able to embed an ideal into this England team for the next tournament, for the World Cup. So you're still, I think, in favour of Gareth Southgate being in charge, aren't you, Myles? Is that mainly because you think he can continue this good work and better it, or because there's no viable alternatives, though?
I think it's both. I think there's a few things. I do think we make progress pretty much every time. The last World Cup obviously was a bit of a different beast because we went on to face France early. Weird circumstances in the middle of the season. But we're talking about an England side that have now got to a semi-final, a quarter-final and 2 finals in the last 4 tournaments. It's never been this good for us, ever. Yeah. And I don't know why we are so desperate to see a different style of football that might then mean we only get quarterfinals. This is the thing that's going to get us closest to success. I'm willing to take that. And actually, the way that Southgate handles the media is generally really good. And I think that's a massive part of this England job. He's got the players on side. Clearly, they all really love him and love working with him, even if he isn't necessarily renowned for being a tactical genius. That's a big part of international management. When you haven't got long with players, you'd rather get them settled than try and reinvent the wheel with them. And he's great at that. And then, the other question I have for anyone who says, no, Southgate's got to go is, and who comes in? Because I think we as England fans can be really unrealistic with what England's standing in football is. People talking about, oh, well, imagine how much better we'd be with Guardiola. Yeah, obviously. But he's never going to come. Jurgen Klopp's out of a job. Maybe Ilkay will take it. It's never happening. Like, we overestimate the value of the England job. And it was a fight to even get Southgate to take it in the first place. I don't want to take it off him now because he's never done anything wrong with it, really. Yes, he might make decisions that people question, but put it down to the simple fact, back-to-back finals. That's crazy. First ever final for England on foreign soil. It's an incredible achievement. And we were 5 minutes away from taking it to extra time. Last one, we were one penalty away. Like, these are fine margins.
I know.
You can't tell me that he can't get that right. I think he can.
I think I'm with you. I feel like the lack of an alternative is the biggest thing for me, rather than Southgate still being the best man for the job. I think there would be better people to tactically organise this team. I don't think it will feel quite as sweet if we succeeded with that setup, though, with a manager that maybe wasn't English, for example. I always think Gareth Southgate winning a trophy would feel like a redemption arc for him from when he was a player, but also because he's put his heart and soul into the setup from youth onwards. It feels like an investment from him. I think he sees it that way as well. If he left England, I'm not sure we'd go into club management either, because he's so invested in this setup. And I also feel like it is a momentum that's building with every tournament. I'm just don't want to hear any more kind of reasons or caveats or excuses as to why we haven't taken the opportunity next time in the World Cup if he stays on. I want to know that we've got a full system in place and we've got players who know exactly what their role is, and that we know if player A doesn't play, we've got player B who can step in the same role, in the same profile. I think he can do that. And I think he's learned lessons from this tournament especially. I'm going to hand over to Dave now, because I want to see exactly how you feel about Gareth Southgate. I know you're not his biggest fan as a tactician, but for this England setup, do you think that he can take us forward? Is he the right guy?
I think we're at a point now where I think there might be a couple of managers out there who think I can jump in, that I could cement my name in history here. And if I take over this job, and because we're so close, we won't get any closer now, will we? And that's a difficult thing, isn't it? Like you mentioned, the lack of coaches out there probably who'd be willing to take over the role. You look how obviously Southgate got the job, coming from obviously the under-21s. No real history of success in club football. I think if we do bring someone else in, I think it'll be through who've had experience in the academy. I mean, there's been murmurs about Lee Carsley, hasn't there? Who's meant to have real good pedigree at those levels with the under-21s. And Steve Cooper, I think, is another one has been mentioned. Obviously, he went and did it with the under-7. So it wouldn't surprise me if the FA, if he decided to throw the towel in, if they decided to go that way, because that's just how they've approached it in these last few years.
Cooper's just got a job,
and he's Welsh.
There's I'm not. I'll just make that as an example, but I'm just saying
he knows the system and the setup. Right.
I just want to see him be more decisive. Did you not see I think I saw it on ESPN earlier. I think it was Andy Mittens. There was a moment in the game where Jude Bellingham was being quite animated. I think it was literally just been conceded. Not far long after we conceded, and he was on the touchline. He was basically saying, like, what we're waiting for, like, with his arms out, like, what are we doing? Like, what's the plan? We need to make a change, like, sort it out. Like, we need to sort it out. And a couple of minutes after that, Harry Kane comes off and Ollie Watkins come on. I just think, is that what it's prompting him to make changes? Can he not just make those decisions without something? Do you know what I mean? With something coming about like that, I just think I'd like to see him make decisions more promptly at times. I know we mentioned about it. He's not this master tactician, but I just feel like there's, in tournament football, making these decisions at the right time is just absolutely crucial, and it's proved again in this game. I'm not saying that we would have gone on to win this game, but I feel like after we equalised, I think that there was a time there to make a...
Okay, so
I think that's the
undecided,
point, though, isn't
Dave,
it?
about Southgate, or are you saying no there?
I just don't know if it's going to change. I don't know if he's got the answers to make this team.
That's what's mad to me. Everyone says this. Oh, but does Southgate know what he's doing? Yes, he's our most successful manager behind the only one to have ever lifted a trophy. So of course he knows what he's doing. You can't tell me that Lee Carsley comes in and does better. Like, I can't see a world where that's the answer.
I'm just saying, Myles, that every time...
I get why you say him.
Yeah, but every single time we've come up against a good team in tournament football, the last 3-4 tournaments, we've lost. We've not been able to get the job done.
Beat Germany in the World Cup.
That's not
beat
the
Holland
case.
this time.
Those teams might have had better players than us, but we've not had a better team. We've not been able to assemble a system or a team that is capable of getting the job done. That's just simply how it is at the end of the day. I'm not saying that's the coach's job to do that. I don't know what the answer is at the end of the day. I don't know what the answer is.
And I think that's why we can't throw Southgate under the bus and say that he's not the answer. Because there is no obvious answer. Because it's international football. And you're talking about a finite time with a squad. Every 6 months or so you see them. And it is hard to build a system if it isn't starting right at the bottom. Southgate's done that. And it's taken time. But he has built something up. And every single time we say Southgate should have done this, Southgate should have done this. And then it gets you to a final. And we're a couple of minutes away. That Oyarzabal goal is probably 5 millimeters away from being offside. And then all of a sudden, we're not talking about Southgate bottling this game. That's the margin. Yeah. If Gahey scores that header or Rice scores that header at the end, again, we're not saying, is Southgate the right man? That's the margin. So it's so results-based in international football. That has to work both ways. You can't say because England didn't win a tournament that every single team is trying to win, Southgate is the wrong manager. Because there are more than just one good team in this tournament. Yeah. And I think if you get to back-to-back finals under that management, when you have never done that before, you have to admit, whether I agree with it or like it or not, he's doing something right.
Yeah, I think we'll end the Southgate chat there because, I mean, if he does decide to walk of his own accord, then that's a question for the FA to try and resolve. And that would be a whole big challenge, wouldn't it? But if and when it comes to that, we'll go further into it. But from the playing
one
side,
thing on that really quickly.
Go on.
If he does go, there's one thing I'm desperate for. England fans to show him some respect and some gratitude.
I think in hindsight they will.
They better, because at this tournament, I think it's been shambolic how quickly people have turned on him. And again, he's got us very, very far. Whatever you think, Southgate has given the England national team back to the England fans massively. Everyone is more connected with this national team than they've ever been, it feels like. And that deserves so much praise and credit. And yes, he might have his limitations, but can we all just acknowledge he has done a wonderful job? And if this is his last game, then, mate, thank you, because it's been brilliant watching him, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think that on that note as well, I think we have to reflect in a positive way that we got to a tournament final that looked so unlikely at the start. And that alone is just worth praising the players for finding the resolve to do that in moments where we needed it. And in Southgate on making the right calls and motivating his players when the outside noise was so negative to him as well, and he still kept his head high and plodded on. And if he decides he doesn't want to go through that anymore, I think I kind of understand it because it got quite nasty at times. But on the playing side of it, I'm trying to move on from Southgate really because we might get breaking news while we're recording, to be fair. You never know. From the playing side then, Dave, can you see any of these players calling it a day with England now? There's a few that are the wrong side of 30, but it's a very vibrant young team. So it's kind of clear who they might be. Do you think any of them will actually take that decision after this disappointment?
I mean, I think we're all quite surprised when Southgate announced his squad because there were a few players in there we probably expected to be in there because in the past he's relied on those familiar faces, you know, the likes of obviously Marcus Rashford, Jack Grealish. I think Jack Grealish was probably the most surprising one. He obviously got excluded from the squad. So I think he's shown that he's not afraid to do that now, and I think there'll be players in. I don't think Kyle Walker will see the end of the road yet. I think he'll be around for another tournament, probably. Maybe not as a starter, but he's got the experience and know-how. Kieran Trippier probably won't be there. Harry Kane will be there, but will he be starting? Probably not.
We'll see what a Champions League Ollie Watkins looks like first, shall we?
I think there's question marks over a lot of those players in there. I think the main thing, majority of the bulk of this team, I think it was the third youngest team in the tournament. True. Just shows how much more we've got to grow and develop as a unit. I think there's potential to. We've got to win it at some point. Surely we've got to win something. I
think you're right about Walker and Trippier, Dave. I think that they are kind of in that point now where Southgate needs to decide that whether what they bring to this squad, because they are just fantastic characters and so experienced, whether that outweighs how much they're going to be used and how good they will be at this level. So that's an interesting conundrum for either him or a future England manager, isn't it? And for the players themselves, they might actually decide that they don't want to be part of squads anymore. I think Ivan Toney's an interesting one for me, because by the time the World Cup comes around, it depends where he is, if he's still at Brentford, if he's at another club, whether he's made the right step for his career and whether he's firing on all cylinders still. So he's an interesting one, because the rest of the squad is still kind of like a pretty steady, easily picked squad, I think. It's a very young nucleus that I think will continue, don't you, Myles?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a few obvious ones that probably do move on, but I think we also got to be careful not to write some of them off. Like we talk about Kane not starting the next tournament. To me, that's bonkers. He'll be 32. He'll be England's number 9 for the next 2 tournaments, quite comfortably. Because the style of play he has doesn't mean he's reliant on lots of pace. And okay, in this tournament, we saw the downfall of that at times. But we're talking about a lack of pace and a lack of fitness, which is 2 very different things. Kane will be absolutely up for the next tournament, and it's a World Cup. Walker, I think, will go. He'll be 36 by the time the next tournament comes around. I can't see him playing. And Trippier will definitely go. I think the other one might be Maguire, whether he might call it a day now, because Gahey and Konsa both look so good.
Yeah, maybe.
Does Maguire get back into the starting 11? We missed his presence from set pieces, but generally, I don't think he necessarily is going to get masses of game time. Same with maybe Lewis Dunk, but nothing massive. Because the good thing about all of this is, if we think back a generation, when we had Neville and Ashley Cole as fullbacks, when you look beyond them, you were going, no, like, what do we do when we lose these 2? If Walker and Trippier, both right backs, go, we have Trent, we have Reece James if he's fit, Konsa showed he can play there, Ben White might come back into the fold at some point.
Livramento.
That's the most promising thing. The fact that we can list,
options.
there you go, 5 options. And all right, we've always talked about how right back is really stacked. But actually, you can look at that in a lot of areas. There's a lot of good young players coming through that seem to have bright futures ahead of them. So even the ones that we do miss out, there seems to be ready-made replacements for the next tournament, which is why I don't think we need to change too much.
Okay. Well, do you know what? Not too bleak an outlook from all of us, I don't think. It really does depend on what Southgate does next. But I think unanimous in being grateful to have got to the final, because watch back some of our podcasts from the start of this tournament. We were harsh, weren't we, on England, and the performances weren't great, and we felt really defeated. So to have had this shot, almost a free hit at the best team in the tournament at trying to win it, is a great opportunity. And to have come up short is no disgrace at all. I think that's the perspective we need to remember, however disappointing it feels and will continue to feel. So thank you, England, and thank you, Southgate, again, for kind of keeping hope alive. And I think that will continue for the next couple of years. Fingers crossed, whoever's at the helm. And it's pretty bleak on the football fixture front now as well. There's not going to be much to talk about from now on. I know you're all chomping at the bit to see Wednesday's Champions League qualifying round between Dynamo Batumi and Ludogorets. We all are. But it's not quite the same, is it? I think the Premier League countdown is what we're all looking forward to. And the transfer market movers and shakers, I think, was what we'll probably focus on going forward. If you've got any ideas or suggestions you want us to discuss in this break before the Premier League starts, let us know. We're all ears. We're keen to see what content you'd like to see. But please do like, subscribe and follow wherever you're listening or watching this right now. Guys, thank you. Any closing words, Myles?
Just come on, England. Come on, Southgate. Let's go again. 2 more years.
Dave, how about you?
Oh, I'm just looking forward to get back to... The sooner we get back to the club season, we can get over this
Dave, remember you're a Man United fan.
I was going to say...
Traumatic night.
But yeah, I think we're still Man United fans who don't have any optimism lately, but we'll see.
We've got all that to come.
See how many games in we get into the season before we're on to the next season.
It depends how many more Dutch players you sign.
On that note, guys, thank you for listening to us and persisting to listen to us through this tournament. It's been really great having you along, and please stay tuned for more. See you soon. Thank you.
See you later.